welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World with Farrukh, Pitafi and Raja Faisal with us in the studios. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at what is happening in the political dynamics of the country with the PPP co-chairman, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, speaking about a level playing field, saying that this is something that is pointed towards the PML N, and that is something that if was otherwise, he would have pointed out that case. This is important, especially in terms of course, the very recent PTM alliance that brought PPP and PML N together, and it seems that there is a rift or a start of a friction between the two, especially in light of the current situation, and then of course the upcoming general elections. Also, of course, on the horizon is the return of the PML N leader, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, expectedly on October 21st, at the time of which rally is also planned at the Minar-e-Pakistan Park in Lahore, and at the event of his arrest, that would be converted into a protest. But what the PPP chairman, co-chairman and the former foreign minister was pointing towards is that ideally the situation should have been that the former parties as part of the PTM alliance would have brought forward the agenda of elections in the country and been together and put that stance forward. However, it seems that that hasn't been the case, and he's also said that the co-chairman, Mr. Asif Ali Zardari, has also been talked to in terms of bringing this up with the PML and ensure a level playing field is there. Another reservation that was pointed out by the PPP leader was towards the release of funds, the budgeted allocation of funds for projects in Singh, which he says has unfortunately not happened, while the same has been progressing in other provinces such as in Punjab. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means, especially in terms of the current political dynamics. And what sort of an action plan is going to be there moving forward by both the PPP and the PML N in light of Mr. Nawaz Sharif's return as well, on which also Mr. Bilawal said that he expects that the leader who's going to be returning to the country will be facing the law upon his return. So this is something that is of course going to be our topic of discussion in the first segment today. Our next one is going to take a look at the increasing tensions between India and Canada after the murder of a Sikh leader in Canada, something of course that Mr. Bilawal Bhutto has also pointed out is something that the PPP is saying is illegal, not just in terms of Canadian sovereignty, but also in terms of international norms and traditions. And then of course in the aftermath of that, we saw that the Indian intelligence officer in Canada was dismissed, and then there was also a counter move by India giving 5 days to a Canadian diplomat to leave the country as well. And it seems that there is a lot of friction with the Canadian leader also speaking about how this is something that has been very closely linked with the Indian government's involvement, which is of course a huge attack on the sovereignty of Canada. And so this is not a very simple accusation. It's very complicated and it has a lot of substance. What sort of impact will that be in terms of how the public views India at the current moment, and the way that the BJP government has been acting within the country, and then of course the way that this particular case is going to move forward in terms of Indian diplomacy and relations not just between Canada and India but other countries as well, and how the entire world is going to respond to this, and something of course that India denies and says that the anti-India elements within Canada are the ones responsible for this, and this is something that Canada needs to be cognizant of. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means for the international community and how they're going to respond to that, and of course the upcoming evolving dynamics between the two countries. For this, of course, we've been joined in the studios by Farrukh and Faisal. We've also been joined online for our first segment by Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bader, leader PPP, and we've also been joined by leader PML N, Mr. Ramesh Singh Arora. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the discussion, and of course it's important to get a viewpoint from both of your parties, and I'm glad that the representatives of both parties are here to be part of the debate. Zulfikar Sahab, I'll start with you, since of course a statement has come in from the leader of PPP, and I want you to also help us understand it even further. This aspect of a level playing field is not the first time that the PPP is talking about it, but they have clarified now that this is not pointed towards anybody else, such as the PTI as perhaps was understood in the past. This is in fact pointed towards the PML N, and seems to be something that was a cause of disappointment for the PPP.
For inviting my regards to friends. Pakistan and have been talking. We have been asking for the election. We have been talking about elections are not happening. The date of this is what and the things that we have been about because then usually practice the time the scheduled election is not announced and the funds and the ongoing development work is going on. No, that is not being stopped. So in Sindh currently, all the work regarding, especially regarding the flood effects, that has been stopped by the Election Commission of Pakistan. Rest of the Pakistan, including Punjab and other provinces, all the development work has been going on. And a few other important persons who were close to the leadership of PMLN and they have become part of the cabinet and they are part of the current government. So they have been supporting and it seems like they will be allies of PMLN leadership and they will be supporting. So
Let me
people
stop
find
you there because Zulfikar Sahib, let me stop you there because your input is valuable to us, but unfortunately we're not able to comprehend you fully. So I'll come back to you, and hopefully then we can understand your perspective better and move forward with the discussion. So let me move on now to Ramesh Sahib. In the sense of what has been discussed, of course, we'll get a better perspective out of Zulfikar Sahib later on. But I want you to also help us understand what you take from the statement coming in from the PPP leader and the way that it's pointed towards the PMLN, claiming that a level playing field has not been provided and perhaps certain expectations have not been met.
Thank you very much, Sana. Thank you for giving me a chance to say some words, particularly about the discussion going on from the last 2 to 3 days from the People's Party leadership. See, I'm surprised to know that Mr. Bilal Bhutto Zardari is asking for the level playing field, and I don't know why he's a bit reluctant to point out the right person to whom he's asking for the level playing field, because the PMLN party is not in the government, and the caretaker government is not of the PMLN. And if he has some issue with the caretaker setup, then he must talk about that. I have issue with the caretaker setup. If he has an issue with the election commission, then he should talk about the election commission. And if he has an issue with someone else, then he should point it out why he is asking for the level playing field. Because all the 15 parties were in the government for the last 1.5 years, and everything we discussed in letter and spirit, and everyone is on the consensus. Like the last meeting, if you see at the ECC, every party was on board and all the decisions were taken unanimously. So, but now once government is over and now we are in election mode, so now he's talking about the level playing field. Maybe it's one of the what you call maybe it's a bit strong word, election stunt or something like that. But we are unable to understand why he's asking for the level playing field for PMLN. Because now, once we are in the election mode, so certainly every party he has its own manifesto and has its own, like you see, the electables. So once you are in election mode, so you are there and you will be talking about your own manifesto, your own next 5 years plan, how you will go ahead. And certainly once elections are done and all the political parties have their seats, so certainly in some cases you must have some seat adjustments, or maybe you go for coalition government. One point. Number two, like I was listening Mr. Zulfikar and he was talking about that there are certain caretaker ministers who are from the PMLN. We are unable to get our political leadership. Like yesterday, I was listening Khwaja Asif Sahab. He was mentioning that no one is from our party, and it's true. Like who is from the political party? If you're talking about those caretaker ministers who are from the civil servants, they have nothing to do with our party. Yes, he was one time he was the principal secretary to the prime minister, so that was his official job. So that's why he was the principal secretary to the prime minister. It doesn't mean that the principal secretary to the prime minister is from the political party or he's from PMLN. Likewise, Mr. Achima, he was secretary and then he holds different other positions. So it doesn't mean that all those officers or civil servants who are serving as on certain positions, it means they belong to any political party. So no one in the caretaker setup is from the political party. My request would be that we should
Right. Ramesh, but I also want to understand then, of course, that when we understand what Mr. Bidawal was speaking about, he also talked about specifically also in terms of elections and the fact that perhaps the expectation was that both the parties are going to at least have a united front on the matter of elections. Is that also, you think, an unreasonable expectation from a former alliance, and the fact that now parties are different and their manifestos are different?
No, see, there are certain challenges and issues where I think the political parties have same agenda, like the democracy and sense of democracy should prevail. So I think this is the common agenda of all the political parties, that elections should be there and democracy should prevail rather to have some other like you can adventure. So political parties have their own manifesto. So certainly Pakistan People's Party has its own manifesto, Pakistan Muslim League and other political parties, they do have their own manifestos. And once we are in election mode, so every political party would be in the election field according to their own manifesto. But principal stance was that the democracy should prevail. So this is a common agenda. This is a commonly agreed action. So after that, every party has its own manifesto and they will go and contest the election according to their political party manifesto.
Right, absolutely. We've been rejoined by Zulfikar Ali Bader Saab, and I want to understand your take again, Zulfikar Saab, in terms of what really is the PPP looking for from the PMLN. What exactly would it have wanted from the PMLN that did not happen, and that is cause of the reservations that are being cited now by Mr. Bidawal?
PML as a who were close associate of the. So I don't want to name any are in the who are sitting in the cabinet, and the most of the people who are actually running the government, they are close associates of PMLN. The question comes that whether it's the caretaker government, it's a neutral setup, or it's one party setup who is being supported by the caretaker government. So this is the question, that level playing field is not intact, and it seems like the neutral setup is not being set up by.
But then, Zulfikar Saab, that would mean that the real reservation then is with the caretaker setup. Is that what you're pointing towards? Allegedly saying that they're supporting a single party?
I beg your pardon, Sana, I can't hear you. Voice
Zulfikar Saab, I'm saying then the real reservation lies with the caretaker setup, since you're saying allegedly they're supporting a single party. Unfortunately, Zulfikar Saab, there seems to be some problem and we're lost in communication, but I'll come back to you and hopefully we'll be able to hear each other. Farrukh, with reference to what is going on, of course, Ramesh Saab is also of the view that it is not the PMLN that is not providing any level playing field. Of course, the PPP statement says otherwise, but I also want to understand really in terms of actual tangible actions, what really constitutes the level playing field? What exactly does the statement even mean in terms of what the political parties want, especially before elections? And then also whether or not this is something that, that can truly be expected of an alliance that existed before as part of the government together, and now of course the parties are going to be preparing for their own manifestos.
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I think that I was actually waiting for the turn, and I thought that I can actually provide you with some perspective as well.
Great.
One aspect that you have to remember, that alliance between PMLN and People's Party has always been marred by two things. One, bad history, because they have a history of bad blood. There was, back in 1990s, they used to be at loggerheads with each other. The second thing is, there is this instinctive, realization that there is a zero-sum game between the two parties. If you want to get Punjab's votes, of course you have to compete with each other. Whenever these two parties have come together, They have come together either because there was a third party which was more powerful. For example, Pervez Musharraf's time when we saw the fiction called Charter of Democracy. And then, of course, again, PTI also seems to have united them. But even then, there is a third aspect that is quite interesting. And that is that People's Party keeps on actually using its own intellect to play interesting games, whereas PMLN's approach is of muscling everything around, right? So already you can see that PMLN has already started believing that it is going to be in power after elections. With that kind of hubris and with that kind of arrogance, things actually go awry. And what they have done, and I think it was a failure on People's Party's part when the government, previous government was formed at that time, because every party had to join the, treasury benches. The problem was that the leadership of opposition actually went to a person who was a card-carrying candidate for PMLN's ticket. So when it came to caretaker setups, appointment and all, it seemed to be a very interesting aspect that it was PMLN which was negotiating with PMLN regarding the appointment of caretaker setup. So in that situation, People's Party seems to have felt that it has been left high and dry. And it is not merely at the center or in Punjab or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa elsewhere. It is also in Sindh, where the caretaker finance minister ended up being a person who used to be, when he was a secretary, trade secretary, he used to be very close to PMLN. With that kind of a situation, I think People's Party has realized that it is in dock and it has to actually keep on creating fuss about this issue, and it is intelligent enough to know how to agitate about the matter. Right now, PMLN does not understand that it is not guaranteed to get the next government, especially with all the atmospherics. It keeps on creating more problems for itself by demanding more from the system. Prosecute this person, prosecute that person, right? Adjust my entire family into political system. With that kind of a situation, I think PMLN is burning itself out very quickly, and People's Party is smart. Yesterday's intervention of Bilawal Bhutto Zardari could have been a master class in politics.
Okay.
Right? With that kind of a situation, I think that PMLN might use muscle where it can, but it will be lost in actual fight because People's Party uses brains, not merely brawn, to fight.
All right, and we'll take more perspectives in on that, but they say third time's a charm, so we're going to try Zulfikar Sahab once again, and I hope this time around we can hear each other, Zulfikar Sahab, and if you can please care to share your perspective once again on what the PPP stance is, and also add to what you were earlier saying. My question was with reference to that, that the real reservation then, it seems, lies with the caretaker setup and not the PMLN. Would you agree with that?
Yes, Sana, I can hear you. Actually, the People's Party leadership have been talking about. I just want to conclude on few things. First thing, that we have been asking for the elections, whatever has been decided by the CCI. We don't dispute that, but we have been asking for the date of election because of the chaos and uncertainty in the country. People's Party leadership is asking and requesting the Election Commission to announce the date for the election. Once the date of the election is being announced, things are going to get clear because all the political parties are going to create their manifesto and going to go for the elections or at the grassroots level. So that is the first demand. And other thing, the level playing field that I have given you, one of the things that I mentioned before about the schemes and development funds which have been released for the flood affectees, that has been stopped, and rest of the country, the development schemes are going on. So one thing that is affecting the flood affected, we are raising the voice for them. That this is again one of the things that shouldn't have happened. And another thing about level playing field, I mentioned about the caretaker government as well, because it seems like many of the close associates, they have been joined in the federal cabinet and even in the provincial provinces. There are a number of bureaucrats who have been supporting the PMLN. So our point is not that we ask for the neutrality of the caretaker setup, because we are asking for free, fair, and transparent election. So if any of the close associates of the PMLN leadership are going to be sitting in the government, caretaker government, and the election comes, of course they are going to go and support their close associate, their political affiliations. Though they don't have a political party, but they have a political affiliation. So our leadership have been asking that there should be a level playing field, that these all kind of people who have a political association with any kind of political party, they should not become party to rest of the political parties. So we have been asking a few days back, a few days later, you will be seeing that few other political parties are going to asking these questions again. So our stance is very clear. We are asking and requesting the Election Commission to announce the date of the election. And it seems like that things are, being concluding, and Election Commission today has...
Absolutely. And Zulfikar Sahab, I understand that. What I don't understand is, what are you asking from PMLN?
You see, Mr. If you have heard the yesterday's press talk of Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, he mentioned that it was Pakistan People's Party's leadership who brought all the stakeholders on one platform and created PDM, and then we were sent out from the platform, and then we, brought everyone back. So all we are asking that whatever is happening and whatever should happen, it would have been nicer if all the political stakeholders would have come closer, clumped together and decided. Because all the political parties are going, they have their own manifesto and they have their own symbols. They are going to fight election with each other, They are not going to be the collision partners, or they are not going to do the seat adjustment.
Right, absolutely. I understand your point. And Ramesh sir, yes.
One sentence. I just wanted to point out, and this is a jumla that came to me, that the contest seems to be between level field and even field. Level playing field and even playing field.
Right, and Ramesh Sahab, it seems that all Zulfikar Sahab is saying is just asking you to be nice. Is that so hard? Can you be nice to them? Do we have Ramesh Sahab with us?
Sana, one more thing. You see, we have been asking for the constitutional demand of the election, and we respect the people from the PMLN, but they have been juggling with their words and they have been getting away from the constitutional demand. We understand that CCI meeting happened and the date was announced and everything was decided, but all we are asking that election date should be announced. Though it should be after the 90 days, 100 days, 120 days, whatever. But date should be announced, so there should be no chaos and no uncertainty in the country regarding the politics and regarding the elections in the country.
And Zulfikar Sahab, I understand that. I also wanted Ramesh Saab's opinion on that, but I'll come to him later since Faisal seems to be ignored, and that is not the purpose. Faisal, I'll give you two questions in a row. How about that? With reference to what is going on, firstly, your take on what you think is then going to be the evolving dynamic between both the parties, and secondly, the demand at the end of the day of what Zulfikar Sahab is also pointing towards seems to be centered around the holding of elections. And I want to understand, while the talk is about how the ECP is in fact responsible for announcing the date, why is it then that the target seems to be another political party, that is the PMLN, or even the caretaker setup for that matter? Why is it then that there is a lot of the reservation that is targeted on them then, if it is just the ECP?
Sana, if we go through the track record of People's Party, of course we know that they do believe, especially during the elections or campaigns of the elections, they do believe in politics of agitation, and that is what we are seeing right now. Of course, they were looking for a sort of narrative, and that's how they are shaping that narrative. And here earlier I saw obviously Bader Saab talking about that they were the ones who actually initiated the idea of forming PDM and then of course taking over the government, and they do take the credit of that, but they do not want to take the credit of 16-17 months of the carnage that took place, especially related to economy. They failed to control, of course, the previous government, the way they have been trying to counter the hindrances we saw, the economic hindrances. Of course, it was a job not well done, and of course we are still facing the problems just because of that phase, number one, and they don't want to take credit of it. They will not be standing side by side with the PMLN. Of course, we have PMLN here, still agrees and accepts it that they tried to fix it, but of course somehow the situation was as worse.
You think they haven't been true partners?
They
No.
tried to fix economy, but they couldn't fix their own family politics.
Exactly, it is, and Farrukh has rightly pointed out, and Sana, yeah, of course, and I think it was politics within politics and within the party, that politics has actually tarnished their own politics, the party's politics, and to me I think it is, if we look at the PDM's stance at that time during the government, of course they did not say anything and they said yes to everything which was being proposed at that time, but now when of course the government is over, they took their own People's Party. They very well knew that all of the positions they were holding during that time, they were more of a constitutional positions within the government setup, and anything to do with the people, they intentionally didn't take the responsibility at the time of PDM government was formed. So here it is, obviously People's Party trying to simply go away from whatever the fruits we are seeing of PDM's 16 months government, but they are leaving behind, of course, the lonely PMLN. They all the grudge of the people. They want people to go towards them, not towards People's Party.
What, in your opinion, is the role of the caretaker setup in all of this?
Well, the caretaker setup, of course, traditionally it is considered that the premier role they have is to hold free and fair election, and that's it, nothing else, and that is what the government is trying to do. But if we look at obviously the legislation in the last phase of the PDM government, of course they empowered the government, and yes, there were extraordinary situations of Pakistan, and for that of course the interim setup was supposed to be empowered, and that is why it is empowered. And now People's Party, knowing the fact that throughout since almost 20 years they have been holding position in Sindh province, and in Sindh province of course the setup in place in there, I'm talking about the civilian setup as well, administrative setup as well, I mean all of that, it belongs to People's Party, and it is a known fact that of course they have their affiliations with the political party, unannounced ones. So I don't know why they are sort of whinging about it. Number one, and very important point I want to say, if we look at Punjab, of course PMLN wants to hold ground here, and they have more challenges in Punjab rather than People's Party having more challenges in their own stronghold, own backyard. I'm talking about Sindh. So PMLN is having what? Of course PTI is here, of course TLP is here, of course we know that newly formed IPP, Istikam Pakistan Party, it's there as well, and it can play a pivotal role.
All right.
And People's Party is there also.
Yeah, People's Party is there as well, but of course when they are not seeing, traditionally they have been focusing on South Punjab, but this time around they are not seeing any alibis where they can penetrate in and can
All
catch
right, let me take Ramesh Saab's opinion on this as well, since a lot of comments have been passed on your party, Ramesh Saab, and I want you to respond to them, with Faisal saying you've been left alone and Zulfikar Saab saying why can't you just be nicer. I just want to also understand then in terms of what the PMLN strategy is, especially in terms of different political parties including the PPP and different areas, what then is the plan ahead, and then given the challenges as Faisal was pointing out, not just in Punjab but of course in preparation for the upcoming elections, it seems a lot lot was being put forward on the return of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, and it was said that the Nawaz Sharif effect is going to change a lot of things, and of course that is yet to be seen. But is that something that PMLN is counting on?
Yeah, Sana, thank you very much. See, let me first of all give me the credit to the Chief Minister, to the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of the Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, because it was not very easy to have a government of 15 different political parties, and when you have 15 political parties in the government, and on a very small, like you say, if you're not going to give them a 4 billion package to the Sindh, and all of a sudden the former foreign minister would come and say, okay, if the government is not going to give us support 4 billion rupees for the Sindh, now we have to decide either I will be in the ministry or not. So such sort of statement means they have decided, they have their own mind, and this is what I'm going to say. It's from my side, not from my party, because my party has some other stuff. But as a PMLN worker, I have this sense that it was not very easy to have such government. But my political party, the PMLN, and at that time the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, has decided that we have formed this government and we will continue this government as it is. So now, when the government is over, and during the last 16 months, it was a very difficult time, and you see the hype and the dollar rate and the petrol prices and inflation and everything. So certainly, as the other gentleman said, now the People's Party, they don't want to take any blame. That's why they have started this blame game. And because of that blame game, they know they are going to be discredited, and they want that all discredit should go towards the people, to the PMLN, because we have lost the political capital. You know, today whoever is going to say like that, the public people of Pakistan, when you ask who is responsible, certainly every finger is coming to us that this is because of the PMLN. So that's why political parties, People's Party, and I'm unable to understand why they're going to do this blame game, because all the decision made was commonly, and in last CCI, what they're talking about again and again about elections. In CCI, they were fully on board when they talked about the delimitation. They took a decision of delimitation. It took around 4 to 5 hours to come out of this CCI meeting, and they have principally decided that they will go for the delimitation. Certainly, when you go for the delimitation, it will take some time period, and PMLN has never said don't want elections. So we are very in favor of the elections, and certainly our guide, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, is going to come to Pakistan on 21st October, and once he is in Pakistan, certainly the other political parties, they are scared of Nawaz Sharif, because once he is coming back, certainly they will start up their political campaign, election campaign, and once that campaign is started,
right,
so certainly people will go towards the PMLN. So that is their scare, and I'm unable to understand why they are asking for the level playing field towards the PMLN. If they point out towards the right quarters, so certainly maybe it will help them.
All right, and Zulfikar Saab, of course, I'd like your take on that as well. If you can help Ramesh Saab understand why is it that you're asking the level playing field from the PMLN and not from certain quarters, as was pointed out. And of course, their request is simple enough as well, just to stop playing games. With reference to, of course, the electoral stance, I want to then understand how what the PMLN is asking for is different from what you would have expected or what you are also saying. And then add to that, please, the impact you think the return of Mr. Nawaz Sharif is going to have. This is something that, of course, the PMLN is talking about a lot, and there's going to be a lot of focus on that in the coming days. How is the PPP reacting to that?
Pakistan People's Party Chairman Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari mentioned yesterday in his press talk that he has been taking name of PMLN. If there is a claim to someone else, he would have taken name. Why would I avoid it? So this is very clear, because once he brought all the stakeholders on board and everybody has been deciding things jointly with consensus, PMLN is now taking a solo flight, and they wanted to take decisions on their own. They have the blame and the claim is on PMLN because they are not providing and they are not doing a level playing field. They want to have a added value through the management of the caretaker setup or whatever. This is the thing that he mentioned yesterday, that's the reason he is blaming the PMLN, not someone else. If there would have been someone else, he would have named it. First thing. The other thing is, Pakistan People's Party is all set to go in the elections, and whatever will happen, we'll see. But we want the elections on time. But Election Commission should, announce it. And People's Party is not at all afraid of anybody. We have our own symbol, our own manifesto ideology, and we will go in the elections on our own. And our party has been demanding that Mia Nawaz Sharif Saab should come back to Pakistan, and we are glad that he will come back to Pakistan, and he will have to face the cases, because in one of the cases he is the absconder right now, and he will have to come back and face the trial and come out of that, positions which he has to face once he put his foot on the land. So once he is all out and clean, which is not an easy task, because it depends on the cases, because 184.3, which the practice and procedure bill is going on, if there is a retrospective, concession to Mia Nawaz Sharif Saab, then there are a number of other cases that the judges have
Absolutely. I got your point. Thank you very much, Zulfikar Saab, for joining us and being part of the debate. Ramesh Saab, I will request you to stay with us for the next segment as well. But before we conclude this, Farrukh, I'd like your take as well. And then add to that the fact that whether or not, of course, what happens in terms of the legal cases against Mr. Nawaz Sharif, will his return still not have an impact even if he is arrested, even if he is behind bars? Will that also not still contribute to the PMLN's vote?
Right. Thank you, Sana, once again for granting me this opportunity, because I know that you're hard pressed for time. But I wanted to say that I have great respect for Ramesh Saab. He's a dear friend. So I don't seem to want to actually contradict him. But one understands that he has to plead his own party's case. And I have to actually give you my objective view, whatever appears to me. My biggest concern when he was saying that Shehbaz Sharif has done a lot, I have huge respect for the way Shehbaz Sharif has conducted himself, right? But look at what his party kept on doing to him when he was Prime Minister. Every 5 minutes there would be summons to London, and then we got the leaks from Maryam Nawaz as well, where it was clear that she was setting the agenda and the Prime Minister was, just steering the wheel. And then something else happened. Then we saw that Prime Minister is summoned to London, and then in his plane, an absconder is actually ferried back and he becomes Finance Minister of the country. So with that kind of pressures, and we know that Ishaq Dar is also related to the Sharif family. So whenever blood is going to trump, capabilities, there you are going to have this royal mess.
Okay.
So PMLN is going to struggle, and it doesn't know what it is walking into in Punjab, because there is too much anger regarding economic issues. We all come from the same root, Sana. We know the kind of palpable distress there is regarding, Mia Nawaz Sharif's return, and then People's Party. Never underestimate People's Party's ability to set the narrative. Who started calling 2013 elections RO elections? It was Asif Ali Zardari. Who called, Imran Khan selected Prime Minister of Pakistan? It was Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. Right. So they have the kind of capacity. Mia Nawaz Sharif has actually lost the window when he could have appealed to the people. Had he come 1 year ago, when actually Ishaq Dar came. But I still want to see what becomes of it. but
All right.
I don't have much hope.
Right, and Ramesh, since we're short on time, I won't be able to take your response on that. But of course, we'll keep continuing this, and there'll be no end to this discussion if we don't stop now. We still also have to talk about the very important issue that is going on between India and Canada. And Faisal, let me start with you, especially in terms of what, of course, has transpired in itself, the murder of the Sikh leader, of course, and then the way that the Canadian leader has come forward, talked about the Indian government's involvement, and then, of course, what has happened in terms of actions taken by both the countries as well. How sour do you think that this potentially can go?
Of course it is sour, and both of the countries, they are head on right now, and they are obviously showing their evil eyes to each other, as we know about it. Actually, what has happened is India thought that if they simply do it, nobody would know what has happened, and it was quite nincompoop of them to think this way, because what they've done is, as soon as the leader actually came out of the temple, I mean, gunmen, they shot him. And they thought, well, the story is over, because it was dark time, and nobody would know what has happened. But they've been tracked down by of course the police service, and they have all of the evidences, which people they were meeting before and after, and who were the people they were in touch with. So the whole story, the whole evidence they have in their hand, and they have a very strong case. Now, if we come towards people at large over there, especially Sikh diaspora and Muslim ones in Canada, not only in Canada, but in America, in Australia, in UK, they are highly disturbed of the fact that RSS goons, they have penetrated in these countries, and they are creating troubles, of course, both for Sikhs and Muslims, especially Muslims from Pakistan. So this is what is happening. And now, I was earlier talking to one of my friend who is of course a journalist living in Canada, Ontario. He was telling me that people at large, both Sikhs and Muslims, they are quite relieved from this, because they know that now, of course, this madness would end, because they were always scared living in Canada just because of RSS goons' presence in there.
Right. Ramesh sir?
One very quick request.
Yes.
Can we actually call them Sikhs by their own name rather than Sikhs?
Oh yeah, English.
Right, Ramesh sir, the situation in terms of what has happened, the violation of a country's sovereignty and violation of international norms by India is not new to us. But this happening to a country like Canada, do you think that this is something that the entire international community will be perhaps more cognizant of than other instances by India in the past, and that this relationship, this important dynamic between Canada and India and the way that it evolves will eventually create an impetus for the community to no longer ignore the kind of possibilities that exist in terms of actions taken by Indian government that are in violation of country's sovereignty and international norms?
See, the answer of your question is yes. I foresee that after happening this incident, and the Prime Minister of Canada stood up in the Parliament and talked about the incident happened in Canada, and he said that there are certain evidences that behind this crime there is India. So it means, who is India? India is the RAW, and the RAW is doing such things. But if you remember, with yourself, Sana and the Farrukh, we conducted so many programs, particularly on the Khalistan referendum, and there we discussed that this referendum is in the progress, and the Sikh community living abroad in Canada, America, Europe, everywhere in the world, they are like running for this referendum, and they want that we should win this referendum, and ultimately will go to the United Nations. That, see, this is the result of referendum, and the Sikh community wants their own homeland because they don't feel comfortable in India, and their rights are not respected, and they have been humiliated, and they have been genocide by the Indian authorities, the forces, and the RSS, the RAW. So certainly, Israel is going to stand up against the policies of the Modi and the India. He will be taken to the task, and this is what happened in Canada. Not only in Canada. If you look at the history of Pakistan, they have been infiltrated in Pakistan via Afghanistan. The RAW has been infiltrated in Pakistan via Balochistan. The RAW has been infiltrated up to the Lahore, and so many other Pakistanis have been killed by the facilitators in Pakistan. Now, there's a question for the United Nations, for the human rights defenders, for the human rights organization, that now India should be taken to the task. India must be asked that you have done this crime in the land of Canada, and my point of view was here. And today we had a protest in front of the Press Club Lahore, and the entire Sikh community living in Pakistan, they had only one question, and they had only one demand, and the demand is, if the crime has happened in Canada, why the guy who was in the embassy of India in Canada, why he's going back to his country? He should be forwarded his case should be in the local court of Canada, and his case should be listened in court of justice in Canada. And accordingly, whatever outcome is, he should be taken to the task according to their own law. Rather, he's going back to India because India would claim that he has done nothing.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ramesh Singh Arora, for joining us and being part of the discussion. Farrukh, do you think that this is something that has the potential, especially coming in from the Indian response, to be looked at and seen only as something that is solely about the Khalistan movement, solely about a certain community, solely about Canada and India, and not just in a larger perspective as it should be?
Of course not. Sana, it is very clear that India, it has been going through this extremism, right? And extremism usually is the race to the bottom. So what they have done, they don't even comprehend what they have done. Right now, when you talk about Canada, Canada's leadership has been bullied in the past. We have seen how India kept on actually treating Prime Minister Trudeau when he was visiting India. We have seen even them actually, mistreating Prime Minister Sunak. He was being, bullied by the Indian media as well.
Right.
The biggest thing that is important to understand is that when it comes to Canada, Canada is one of the Five Eyes. In intelligence world, it is thought to be the strongest bond possible, right? Five Eyes are all English-speaking countries: Australia, New Zealand, UK, US, and Canada. So these countries don't spy on each other, and they cooperate. And they have been responsible for rehabilitating India's image in the past 20 years, especially in the war on terror. So right now, when you actually go to their turf and kill somebody, you are actually provoking the kind of reaction that will burn you out. And it has been happening in the past as well. Look, West shows a lot of patience. We saw it with Saddam Hussein. We saw it with Taliban as well.
Right.
And there are strikes after strikes, and then the other person thinks that there are not going to be consequences. But when the situation turns, they literally block you out and make an example of you. And this is my concern right now when you're talking about the way things are going. I think in the long run, India is going to have a comeuppance. It won't even know what happened.
All right, and we hope that is a concern that is shared by India as well, and that they're aware of what is going on and what potentially is coming. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for always being part of the debate. That's all that we have from the show. We'll now see you tomorrow.